सद्गुरु को बारेमा उत्तर दिउँ। उहाँले विज्ञान भैरव तन्त्रको 112वटा श्लोकलाई लिएर त्यसो भन्नुभएको हो।
Let me respond to this statement made by Sadhguru. He is referring to the 112 shlokas or verses of the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, which is a Shaiva Tantra, and making such a claim. Out of the 112 verses, there are 2 which are related to breathing. Because those shlokas are related to breathing, he simply linked them to Anapana Smriti or Anapana Sati in Pali. But if we look at those shlokas, they have nothing to do with Anapana Sati. This is the first point.
दोस्रो, भगवान बुद्धले दुईटा या एउटा विधि सिकाउनु भएको हुन मानौ कि एक आनापान सति मात्रै या आनापान स्मृति मात्रै सिकाउनु भएको होइन।
Secondly, Bhagwan Buddha did not teach just 1 or 2 methods. He did not teach only Anapana Smriti or Anapana Sati. He in fact taught 84,000 dharmaskandhas or collections of teachings. These 84,000 dharmaskandhas themselves were later used in various nikayas, in schools such as Sarvasivad, Theravada, etc., and also in Mahayana, including Vajrayana and Paramitayan. The only difference among these schools is the emphasis given to different teachings. Now, for Sadhguru and others like him, other Hindu gurus as the question states, for them to claim to know everything about the Buddha without studying Buddha Dharma, and just based on the fact that they were born in India and the Buddha also taught in India. He was born in Nepal and taught in India. So just based on this, to think that they automatically know everything about the Buddha is merely their vanity.
उहाँहरुको बुद्ध धर्मको केही पनि अध्ययन छैन। उहाँ मात्रै होइन, स्वामी विवेकानन्दको पनि त्यही लागू हुन्छ।
They have not actually studied anything of the Buddha Dharma. And this is applicable not just to him, but also to Swami Vivekananda. And we will address this issue as well later. But none of them have studied under authentic Buddhist teachers, nor have they studied sutras, called suttas in Pali, nor Tripitakas, etc., in any language, be it Chinese, Tibetan, Sanskrit, or Pali. One text, the Dhammapad, was translated into Hindi a long time ago, and most of them assume that the Dhammapad represents the entire teachings of Buddha Dharma, and even consider it to be the highest one. But the Dhammapad is only one small part of the Tripitaka. And the reason Anapana Smriti came into the spotlight was because it was popularized in India by Sri Goenkaji, as it is practiced in the beginning of his method. Based on this, gurus like Sadhguru and Ravi Shankar, etc., assume that it is the only method that the Buddha taught. As I just mentioned, he taught 84,000 methods. Among these, Vipassana itself is of many different types. The Pali Tripitaka itself includes not just Anapana Sati,
Maranusati, Anapana Sati matri hoina, Kayagata Anusati, Vedana Anusati, Dhamma Anusati, Chitta Anusati,
but also Marananusati, Kayagathanusati, Vedananusati, Dhammanusati, Chittanusati, and Pabhasa. The Samyutta Nikaya also includes Kalyanamitta Anusati, Devanusati, and various others. Thus, there are various types of Anusati or Smriti Upasthana called Satipatthana in Pali, which are mindfulness meditations. Thus, the Buddha taught many types of these Smriti Upasthanas, but the Indian gurus do not know of these methods because they have not studied Buddha Dharma at all. They just read a few Buddhist books in English, and upon reading one book, they assume that they understand all of Buddha Dharma. They cannot even recite a single shloka or verse, whether in Chinese, in Tibetan, in Sanskrit, or in Pali. They talk about things that contradict the words of the Buddha and claim that those erroneous ideas are the words of the Buddha.
इन्डियामा पनि यो याद गर्नुपर्छ हामीले कि तेस्रो शताब्दी पछि बुद्ध धर्मलाई पतन गराउनु ठुलो प्रयास भयो.
And we should also remember that in India, after the 3rd century, there were great attempts made to subvert Buddha Dharma. In one such attempt, many Purans were written such as Harivamsha Puran, Bhagavad Puran, Bhavishya Puran, Garur Puran, Padma Puran, Linga Puran, and many others, in which the Buddha is depicted as an avatar or incarnation of the god Vishnu. As soon as he was depicted as an avatar of Vishnu, it was already in contradiction of the words of the Buddha himself. On top of that, it becomes clear that the Pandits who wrote these Purans had not even studied a sentence of what the Buddha taught. Because, as stated in the Anguttara Nikaya's Dona Sutta, when the Brahmin Drona asked Buddha if he was a Deva or God, saying, Devono Devam Bhavisetiti, the Buddha replied,
Nakhoam Brahmano Devam Devo Bhavisami. हे ब्राह्मण म देवता होइन
Nakho aham brahmana devo bhavisamiti, meaning, O Brahman, I am not a deva. So how can Buddha be an avatar of Vishnu? This shows that the writers of Purans such as Vishnu Puran, Bhagavad Puran, which is also called Srimad Bhagavat, which is recited at Sapta by the Hindus here, had not even referred to this basic subject. That same tradition later came to Shankaracharya in the 6th century, and it is the same thing with him. In his commentary in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, also known as Shariraka Bhashya, based on the way he has refuted Shunyavadi and Chittamatra and others, it is evident that he has no understanding of these views, that he has not studied them at all. He has assumed the Shunyavadi view to be void or without anything, or a vacuum as said in English, and refuted it based on this assumption. Likewise, other later gurus like Madhavacharya, Ramanuja-acharya and others followed suit. For example, Madhavacharya in his Sarva Darshan Sangraha writes,
Mukhyo Madhyamiko Vivartam Akhilam Sunyasyam Ene Jagat. भनेको यो सबै जगत विवर्त हो विवर्त भनेको माया
Mukhyo Madhyamiko Vivartam Akhilam Shunyasa Mayane Jagat, which means this entire world is Vivarta or Maya or illusion, and it all arose out of Shunya or nothing. Now this is not the meaning of the Buddhist Shunyata, which is found both in Mahayana and also in Theravada. No Buddhist has stated that this world came out of Shunya or nothing, nor is this stated in any Buddhist text. Nor has any Buddhist text mentioned that the world is Maya or illusion. Madhavacharya said,
Mukhya Madhyamiko Vivartam Akhilam Jagat. यो पुरै जगत विवर्त हो
Mukhya Madhyamiko Vivartam Akhilam Jagat, meaning this entire world is an illusion. But the Buddhist texts say it is Mayavat, meaning like an illusion, and not an illusion. In the Pena Pindupam Sutta of the Samyutta Nikaya, which is available in Theravada as well as in Sarvastivada in Sanskrit, it says,
Phena Pindupam Rupam Vedana Buddhu Upama Marichi Sama Sanya Sankhara Kadal Upama Mayupamancha Viyanam Vigyan Maya Jasto.
Phena Pindupam Rupam Vedana Bulbu Upama Marichi Sama Sanya Sankhara Kadal Upama Mayupamam cha Viyanam, meaning Vigyan or consciousness or mind is like an illusion. The body is like foam, and so on. The word used in all these comparisons is light, and that the Buddha referred to the Panchaskandha or the 5 aggregates in this way signifies that the world itself is that way, because the Panchaskandha or the 5 aggregates are the world or samsara. As was said, Phena Pindupam Rupam. Here Rupa or form refers not just to our bodies, but to all the forms that we see around us. And for the 5th skandha,
Mayupam cha Viyanam Vigyan Maya Jasto ho. Vivartam Akhilam Jagat भन्ने माधवाचार्यले सर्वदर्शन संग्रहमा लेख्नु भएको
Mayupamam cha Viyanam, meaning that Vigyan or consciousness or mind is like Maya or illusion. Thus the Vivartam Akhilam Jagat that has been written by Madhavacharya in Sarvadarshanam Sangraha does not align with the Buddhist view in any way. From this we can see that these gurus had not even studied a single Buddhist sutta properly, but they write zealously claiming that Buddha Dharma states this and that, and this custom came down to Vivekananda as well, and he too made similar claims. based on reading the translated Dhammapad, and that too a translation from Sri Lanka, and a few other translated texts, he readily spoke about Buddha Dharma as if he had understood everything of the Buddha Dharma. But this is wrong. And referring to your question, here too, Sadhguru-ji has similarly spoken incorrectly. He says that the Buddha taught 2 of the 112 slokas or verses of the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra or Shiva Tantra. But even those 2 slokas have nothing to do with Anapanasati. They are related to breathing but are not Anapanasati. So it is wrong when he says that these 2 have been taught by the Buddha. In fact, he has only mentioned one of these slokas, and I am actually pointing out that there are in fact 2 slokas related to breathing there. He said that the Buddha has taught one of them. This shows that he does not even know that there are 2 breathing-related slokas in the Vigyan Bhairav Tantra, which is his own text. So what is there to say of his understanding of Buddhist texts? These types of issues have been occurring since the 2nd, 3rd centuries in attempts to push down, strangle, squeeze out, and suppress Buddha Dharma. And repeatedly doing this has managed to expel it, not just from India, but from the Indian subcontinent itself. When we speak of Bharatvarsha, or the Indian subcontinent, nowadays it commonly only refers to India. But this is incorrect. Actually, the Indian subcontinent also included countries like Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. But because many get confused with this term Indian subcontinent, let's use South Asia instead. So in this way, they drove out Buddha Dharma from South Asia. Some of it remained in Nepal in the Himalayan belt and in Bhutan, which is itself a Himalayan country, and some of it also remained in Kathmandu's Newar community. But here too, due to the suppression by the Hindu kings and Hindu pandits, it got weaker and more diluted until it ended up in its present state. But we must give credit to the Vajracharyas and Shakyas here that they kept alive their Buddhist identity.
कतिपय निवारहरू थेरवादी भन्छन् उनीहरूलाई म दोष लाउँदिन किन एक थेरवाद पनि राम्रो बुद्ध धर्मै हो.
Nowadays many Newars become Theravadi, but I do not blame them for this, because first of all, Theravada is an authentic form of Buddha Dharma, and secondly, this is happening because Vajracharyas have been unable to give them teachings and transmissions, and have been unable to answer their questions. But why did they even become Theravadi Buddhists at all? It is because the Vajracharyas and Shakyas preserved their Buddhist identity that they felt they were still Buddhists. Otherwise, they would have become Hindus instead of Theravadi. Thus, we must definitely give credit to Vajracharyas and Shakyas for protecting whatever they could under such unfavorable circumstances. This is the backdrop related to Jaggi Vasudev, also known as Sadhguruji's claims. I am well aware of the fact that there are many followers of Sadhguru in Nepal, but even if there are 100 million followers, that which is wrong should be pointed out as being wrong. And this is wrong. If anyone can refute what I have just said, please refute it. Don't just get angry, but prove that Bhagwan Buddha taught only one way, with specific evidence. Otherwise, accept that your Guru has made a mistake. This spirit is called Arya Dharma. And this is how the process unfolded in the Indian subcontinent or South Asia in the past. It was because of the use of this process that Buddha Dharma spread widely in the Indian subcontinent. Because when one properly searches for the truth, Buddha Dharma will take the lead. But if one only grasps onto conditionings and what was followed by their forefathers and such, Buddha Dharma will not advance forward.
यहाँ 3-4 प्रश्न छ भयो. एउटा स्वयं ओशो रजनीश. ओशो भन्ने शब्द अघि प्रश्नकर्ताले पनि भन्नु छ जापानिज हो. तर त्यो ओशो भन्ने शब्द कसलाई प्रयोग गर्छ भने भिक्षु गुरुलाई.
There are several questions to be addressed here. First, as the questioner has also pointed out, when we say Osho Rajneesh, the word Osho itself is a Japanese term. But what does the term Osho refer to? In Japan, it is used to refer to a guru who is a bhikshu or ordained monk, not to a householder guru or to a sannyasi. In Japan, householder Buddhist gurus or Zen gurus are called roshi. Gurus who are on a lower level than Roshi are called sensei, but Osho means a bhikshu or ordained monk. The word upajjhaya in Pali and upadhyaya in Sanskrit are the closest terminology related to Osho. However, upadhyaya has now been diminished to a mere subset of the Brahmin caste. Naropa was the upadhyaya of Nalanda. He too was a Brahmin from Kashmir, but he was the upadhyaya of Nalanda. In Pali, the term is upajjhaya. The significance of the title Osho is also the same. Thus, it is a wrong use of the title for a householder who was not an ordained monk and did not live in accordance with a monk's precepts to call himself Osho. He did not understand the Zen terminology, nor had he any idea of what is used in Zen for what, which means that even though he gave a lot of teachings on Zen Buddha Dharma, he in fact had no idea of what Zen Buddhism really is. Similarly, he also talked about many other schools and aspects of Buddha Dharma. For example, he has talked about the Tibetan gurus Naropa and Tilopa. What really happened was, when Chogyam Trungpa taught in the 70s, his teachings were published as books. And it just happened to be that right when those books were published, Rajneesh, also known as Osho, gave similar teachings as contained in those books. So it was only after the publication of these books that he learned of the names Naropa and Tilopa. Before that, there was no sign at all of these names in his teachings. Similarly, it was after Atisha's Mati Parivartan, or mind training, was published in English that Rajneesh gave his own interpretation of it.
जबकि उहाँलाई बुद्ध धर्मको क पनि आउँदैन थियो। एउटा दुईटा श्लोक पनि संस्कृतको या पालीको या चाइनिज या टिबेटनको निकाल्नु सक्नु भएको थिएन।
But he did not know even the ABCs of Buddha Dharma. He was not able to quote even a couple of Buddhist shlokas or verses in Sanskrit, Pali, Chinese, or in Tibetan. He just read whatever he could find translated into English and gave them his own meanings. But where words are concerned, a single word can have many different meanings. As I have already mentioned in an earlier teaching, words like moksha or liberation will have a Hindu meaning, a Buddhist meaning, and a Jain meaning. The same goes with the word karma, which will have a Hindu meaning, a Buddhist meaning, and a Jain meaning. What he did was, he took all the Buddhist texts that were translated into English and gave them all completely Hindu meanings. How can anatma and atma be the same? The question here says, he often says that sakshi or witness is the primary method taught by the Buddha. Where, in which place, in which sutra did Buddha teach sakshi or witness? He has not mentioned this anywhere. We Buddhists can confirm that the Buddha has never talked about sakshi in any suttas or sutras or tantras, and he never stated it to be the root or the primary realization. I had attended one of Rajneesh's discourses around 1987 when he was staying at the Solti Hotel during his visit to Nepal. He was making similar claims back then as well, that he had found the essence of all dharma, which is the sakshi or witness. If one stays a sakshi continually, then one day the sakshi will turn towards oneself, and this is bodh or enlightenment. Now, this is the bodh or enlightenment of Vedanta, not of Buddha Dharma. So here too he was completely mistaken. I have repeatedly mentioned in my teachings that anatma gyan, or realization of no self, and shunyata gyan, or realization of emptiness, is the gyan, or wisdom in Buddha Dharma, not sakshi gyan, or realization of witness. I have already said this in my earlier teachings, but since this is a different context, I will repeat it. Sakshi means the one who continually knows, or the knower.
द्रष्टा अर्को शब्द हो त्यसलाई, किनभने दृश्य देखिरहने, ज्ञाता थाहा पाइरहनेवाला, साक्षी, द्रष्टा, ज्ञाता यी एउटै चीजको नाम हो वेदान्तमा.
Drashta or watcher or seer is another word for it, as it continues seeing the drishya or whatever is happening. Another name for it is gyata, which also means one who continually knows. Sakshi, Drashta, and Gyata are all the same thing in Vedanta. This is knowing whatever is happening. Like how you all are knowing that I am speaking. That one who is knowing, who in some sense is in a serene and peaceful state, just remaining only knowing, is the Sakshi of Vedanta. And Rajneesh has not taught anything beyond this. This is also the same as what Shankaracharya taught, and what is said in Vedanta, what is said in Yog Vasishtha, and what is said in Ashtavakra Gita, and what is said in Avadut Gita. And I have repeated the definition of this many times before, but I will repeat it here again for this question.
शङ्कराचार्यले आत्मा तरिका आत्मा के हो सत चित आनन्द स्वरूप
Shankaracharya states, Atma Tarika, what is Atma? It is Sat Chit Ananda Swarupa. It is Sat Chit Ananda. In the same text, Tattva Bodh, he defines it again. Sat Kim, what is Sat? It is Kalatraya Api Tishtatiti. This means that which remains the same in all three times. That is past, present and future. That which remains unchanging is Sat. Now anyone who has practiced under a Buddhist system or even studied a single Buddhist text will know that the Buddha has taught that everything is anitya or impermanent, including Vigyan, consciousness or mind. After all, the Sakshi in our Buddhist system is Vigyan, which is defined as
Vijanatiti Vigyanam. पालीमा पनि यही अपरिभाषा पाइन्छ
Vijanatiti Vigyanam. The same definition is found in Pali. It means because it knows, it is called Vigyan. But the difference is that in Vedanta, the knowing process is objectified and made into a Sat that is unchanging and always remaining the same. And Rajneesh has also said the same thing. But in Buddha Dharma, Vigyan is anitya or impermanent. It is changing. It is not Sat or unchanging entity, and there is no other Sakshi or witness beyond Vigyan. And why not? Because if there was another Sakshi or witness, then there would be two knowers, one Vigyan and another the Sakshi which is unchangeable. And there has been no one who has experienced Vigyan that is knowing and a Sakshi that is also knowing at the same time. It is not possible that anyone would have the experience of having two knowers who are separately knowing at the same time. Secondly, how can an unchanging entity, which is the Sat of Sat Chit Ananda, know?
चिजले कसरी थाहा पाउँछ त्यो कसरी द्रष्टा हुन्छ साक्षी हुन्छ थाहा पाउँछ
How can it be drashta or seer or sakshi or witness to know? Vijanatiti means knowing. So how can it know? Knowing is a process. It is changing. There can be no knowing without change. Thus a sakshi or witness in the form of a sat, that is unchanging entity, cannot know. Now the question arises, if it cannot know and thus is unconscious, how can realizing such a sakshi, an unconscious witness, lead to wisdom or liberation?
त बुद्धको शिक्षा त यो त्यहाँ परिवर्तनशील थाहा पाउने प्रक्रिया मात्र छ
What the Buddha taught was that there is only a continually changing knowing process, not a knower. This is the point that many Hindu gurus, who though talk a lot about the Buddha Dharma, have not been able to understand to date. That Sakshi is not a noun, but a verb. It is a process. This samsar, or the world we experience, you and me, are not nouns, but rather verbs. Not a noun, not an object, but rather a process which is changing from moment to moment. Even the Sakshi is changing. And how can this be said? If Sakshi is unchanging and can know, then it will permanently and eternally know only the same thing. If it knows something else, then it has already changed. They give this example of a mirror that reflects everything in front of it, but it itself remains the same. But this example is not correct, because even the mirror is changing. It is constantly changing on subtle levels. The atoms and molecules are changing. There is no unchanging entity there. If the Sakshi is actually permanent, eternal, and remains the same, then it does not change, and therefore, even if it can somehow know, it would forever know the same object that it knows at one single point in time. No one has had such an experience. Also, the knower and the known arise simultaneously, because if nothing is known, then there is no knower. Therefore, once something is known, then there is a knower. If nothing is known, then there cannot be a knower. So the known thing and the knower, for example, this thermos and the knower of this thermos, arise together. Now, when the thermos changes, like when it is moved, then something else is known, and that also arises together. Then the knower that knows the new thing cannot be the knower that knew the thermos. Now it is the knower that knows something else. How then can the knower of the thermos and the knower of the new thing be the same? If they are the same, then the thermos would also continue to be known together. I am seeing the wall now, and I should then also be seeing the thermos at the same time. And it would keep adding up like this forever. But first and foremost, this process of knowing cannot even happen without there being change. Thus there cannot be a sakshi or witness that remains the same and unchanging. Yes, if when meditating, one is not given detailed instructions regarding one's experience that accords with samyak drishti or correct view, they will be misled in their experience. There will be a misapprehension in experience, as if there is an unchanging single entity knowing.
बुद्ध धर्ममा कुनै आमा पनि साक्षी र साक्षीको ज्ञान चाहिँ ज्ञान मोक्ष मुक्ति निर्वाण भनेर कहीं पनि परिभाषित.
So what Buddha Dharma teaches is, how does one break through this misapprehension? Through the power of shunyata or emptiness, and through the power of anitya or impermanence. This is not found in any of Rajneesh's teachings. He talks like as if anitya or impermanence is limited to only the outer world that everyone can readily see is impermanent, and which the Hindu Dharma also says is impermanent. But in Buddha Dharma, nowhere is it mentioned or defined that sakshi or realization of sakshi is gyan, moksha, mukti or nirvana, that is wisdom and liberation. And smriti samprajanya is not sakshi. It is translated as mindfulness in English. Smriti means to remember, and samprajanya means to remain alert. These are mental factors of the chitta or mind and are called chaita or chaitasik in Sanskrit and chetasik in Pali. And the knower is changing every moment together with what is known. If it had not been changing, there would be no possibility of knowing something else. No Hindu gurus have been able to understand this point because the principle of atma is in their hearts or at their very core, as said in English. Because they believe firmly in an unchanging and permanent atma at their very core, they are stuck in thinking that there cannot be something else other than that. Thus, the sakshi spoken about by Osho has no relation to the practices of Buddha Dharma. There is smriti samprajanya, which is related to watching, like sakshi or witness, but Buddhist practice is not about just watching. In fact, in Osho's system, the watcher is experienced as I, and that is considered enlightenment. That concept is not present in Buddha Dharma and has no connection to it. What do we look at? We look at anitya or impermanence, dukkha or suffering, and anatma or no self. It is not remaining in the state of sakshi, which is called sakshi bhavana, or the newly coined term sakshi vasati. In Buddha Dharma, it is not accepted that recognizing sakshi is wisdom or the stage of first bhumi or srotapanna. It is not even the beginning of wisdom in Buddha Dharma. But there are various personalities who assume that they are Buddha because they have realized sakshi or witness. Now what is a Buddha? I have already talked about this in detail earlier on in Bodhi TV itself, so let's not go into that today. But if I have an experience of this sakshi that apparently is unchanging and that which is supposedly the I, and when I experience this from deep inside, and I assume that this means I have become a Buddha, then this, according to Buddha Dharma, is a complete misunderstanding, wrong, and idiocy.
आजकल त बुद्ध भनेको सस्तो नाम बुद्ध पुरुष पनि बनाइन्छन् गुरुहरूले के हो बुद्ध भनेको थाहै छैन त्यो दिनेवाला गुरुलाई कुन चरोको नाम हो बुद्ध भने.
Nowadays, the name Buddha has become so cheapened that titles such as Buddha Purush or Buddha Man are made up and just handed out. These gurus, who have no idea of what a Buddha even means, hand out such titles. They read texts written by Vivekananda and give similar teachings based on that. And someone else will again refer to their misled teachings and give such teachings yet again. They never read a single verse of Buddhist texts, the suttas or sutras, shastras and tantras. Why do they do this? I do not understand it. They can talk about their own Hindu dharma, say whatever they want, according to their wish. We Buddhists have no problem with that. But while the Buddha's words, philosophies, shastras or treatises, and Vyakhya Pranali or commentarial traditions are still alive and thriving, these gurus of India are spreading their own hodgepodge interpretation of Buddha Dharma and misleading millions of people. Even the Hindus here in Nepal have been misled. What they are talking about is not Buddha Dharma. They can say whatever they want about Hindu Dharma. We do not care. But when they talk about Buddha Dharma, we Buddhists also have a right to say that what they teach is not Buddha Dharma, a right to say that it has no connection at all with Buddha Dharma. And when we state this, those who are followers of Vasudeva or Sadhguru and of Osho do not feel hurt by it, because it is a fact that what they have said is wrong. That is not Buddha Dharma. And Buddha Dharma is not limited to just a Dhammapad or a few shlokas.